Hello and welcome to the Logic Box with me, Jones. Hope you're well and safe. Coronavirus is still very much out there, so please do look after yourself and your loved ones. Okay, I keep saying this every time I come on the show. Look after yourself and help me to look after you. Okay, so wear your mask, do what you need to do, follow the government's guidelines. All right, now there are lots been happening across the world, especially in America, and also just yesterday, Ghanaians heard the bad news. The former president of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings, sadly passed away. My condolences to his loved ones and all Ghanaians in Africa as a whole. We will be talking about Rawlings, remembering Rawlings. To some, he did well. To others, not so good. We will talk about it. We'll speak to a journalist in Ghana, plus the political, um, not leaders, the political bodies here in the UK. So we'll have somebody from the NPP, NDC, and PPP. They'll be joining us to reflect on the life of the former president of Ghana. It'd be good to hear your take on it. And whilst you're at it, make sure you share, okay? We're live on Facebook and YouTube. Share, share, share. Let's hear your take. All right. 2020 has been a madness, especially getting towards the end of the year. But first things first. The former Football Association chairman, Greg Clarke, resigned over an unacceptable language he used when he referred to black players as colored footballers. Greg Clarke made these comments during a meeting with the Department for Digital, Culture, Media, and Sports Select Committee during a video link. He has apologized. He said he was deeply saddened for the offense he had caused by using the term colored footballers. He also said his words were a disservice to the game. Now, joining me to talk about this particular topic is John Warrington. John Warrington is a sports journalist, and also Kevin George, clinical consultant. Glad to have the both of you on here. It's been a while. Kev and John, how you guys doing? Oops, I think
Good
I
to
have
see you.
muted you. Let's see. Good. We got Kev and John on there. How you guys doing?
Hi, Jonesy. I'm fine. Good to see you, mate.
Yourself, Kev?
All good, man. All good.
Oh, good. Great. Make sure you do share, guys. Make sure you share. Let's hear your take on this particular story. And I'll come to you first, Kev. I saw your interview you did on Sky News, and I think
Yeah.
you've been very vocal when it comes to issues on, to do with racism. And I just want to hear your take, your
Mhm.
reaction when you first heard this comment by Greg.
To be honest, I mean, even just going back to the interview, I was actually disappointed in my interview. To be honest, I think I'm feeding into this question. It's there's a lot of stuff that happens in football behind the scenes, whether it be at the FA or the Premier League or at training grounds. And what really bothers me is not so much Greg Clark's comments. Yes, they're not great, but it's more so the outrage on social media and from the people in the industry, because the people in the industry at the governing bodies or at the clubs who see things that happen daily in front of their eyes do nothing. um, but then when someone makes these comments, there's all this outrage, and for me it's almost like, well, what's this really about? Is it about racism? Does it really incent you? If so, why are you so inactive when it happens in front of you? So yeah, that was kind of my take on it, and that's why I was frustrated, because I don't always do the interviews that I get asked to do, and about race, because it does confuse people in terms of what I do if I keep being
Yeah,
called as like the black expert, come and talk about race.
yeah,
But I think that I think for Greg Clark, it's bigger than his comments because of his position, because of the history, especially with how the Eni Aluku case was managed. It then leads to question that when we do get incidents like the Mark Sampson and they get mishandled, when someone like Greg Clark is at the helm, is it because of his faults and how he operates? Now, we're in a time where you can't make a mistake, or everyone just wants you to the slaughter, and that is it. And I'm not for that at all. We've got this cancel culture, and I'm not for it. But as I said, I think with the history and this comment, unfortunately, when you're in that position, you have to know better. And in a way, a part of your job is doing these interviews and being able to make sure you're on point. So I'm kind of both ways on that.
Okay. Let me bring in John. John?
Jones, actually, it's a good point there, Kevin made. When you're in that sort of position, um, you just cannot make those sort of comments. But let's be clear. Also, it wasn't just about racism;
Yeah.
it was about homophobia as well. And for him to make that statement that homosexuality is a life choice, it just absolutely showed that he's tone deaf to the 21st century. And you put the whole lot together at a time when we are, all of us who are involved with football are trying to improve the lives of everybody involved with it, regardless of creed and everything and sexuality. And then you've got the guy at the very top of the game who's also a delegate for FIFA and UEFA, coming out with stuff like that. And he may have been caught off guard. I don't care. And in fact, if he was caught off guard, what that tends to suggest is it something he thinks anyway, and he's trying to perhaps in his working life be something that he's not. So to me, it suggests that it's still very much a problem that's deep rooted within the game.
But then, Kev, I mean, again, I'll come back. I do understand where you're coming from to do with, your line of work. And every time when these issues come up, you seem to be the go-to person the media tend to call. Watching your interview, you touched on something which I felt was very important. And I just felt like maybe the journalist should have maybe stayed on that particular comment that you made, which was the fear of people actually using the word black, right? And I just want you to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a frustration around terminology that's always changing. So Greg Clarke used the term coloured, which is back in the day that was the correct term to use.
Yeah.
Then obviously people are using other terms since then. And what happens is it's almost like they expire and then people have to learn the new term. And so even say about 2 years ago when I was delivering diversity and equality programs, someone would say mixed race. Now, I always say when I was doing these programs, is I've never heard someone be offended by it. However, now the terminology law has changed. So the correct term is dual heritage. So no wonder that now what's going to happen is, say in 10, 15 years time, someone might say mixed race and get, and so there's this pressure all the time, all these changes. And unfortunately, there is this fear to be seen as racist, even by people who are actually racist. But there's a fear to have the conversation. Sorry, a fear to be seen as racist, and that feeds into having the conversation about race. So a lot of people spend their time avoiding the conversation because they just think, you know what, I don't want the hassle. And unfortunately, and this isn't in regards to Greg Clarke, but I've seen people say things, whether it be online or on TV, and everyone jumps on them. They're racist. And I'm like, whoa, like, just chill. It's not always that. Yes, there are situations when it is that, but I suppose it's subjective. So where do we go with it? However, my overall point is that we can't just go through life just literally deleting people. Okay, you did this, sacked. You did it. There needs to come a time where we look at the root of the problem. We say, okay, yes, we have racist people. It's going to be pretty much difficult to get rid of that because we always jump on each other because of our differences. That's what we do as human beings. But there has to be a time when we look at it and say, okay, there are a group of people who are scared. There are people who don't understand. And it's not as simple as the usual, people need to get educated. It's how do we tackle that fear? How do we approach that and having direct conversations, not just hiring a diversity and equality person, not just doing these campaigns, focusing on that solely.
Kev, can I quickly jump in? Sorry, Jones. Can I quickly jump in there? I've got a question for Kev myself.
Yeah.
I really do take your point there, Kev. But that's taking the racist side of it in isolation. But you put the whole package together. What do you make of what he said about homosexuality being a life choice?
Yes, no, I think when I'm talking about race, I'm talking about diversity and equality on the whole. So that means these are comments about whether it be about homophobia, whether it be about sexism. I put them all in the same bag. But one thing I am mindful of is when I have a conversation about one, I purposely don't blend it because people don't feel heard. So if there's a conversation about race, sometimes people say, well, what about homophobia? And if we're having a conversation about homophobia, someone says, well, what about race? And they say, and so we go all over the place. But when I voice a concern about equality, for me personally, it's the same rule for all, because otherwise it's not really truly about diversity and equality if you're going to treat them differently.
Now, John, I wanted to come to you because I've spoken to a few people about this particular topic, and to some black people, they don't think Greg Clarke is actually racist. And they think the fact that he has resigned is as a result of people just putting pressure on the guy. And I will, before I come to Joe, I want you to, I want to hear your comment on this and ask Kevin George, if he felt offended by what Greg Clarke said.
Listen, it's a difficult one, Jones. And I don't know the man, and I have no idea whether he's racist or not. However, number one, he resigned fairly quickly. He didn't prevaricate, did he? No. He made the comments, and I heard the news together as well. By the way, number one, that he'd made the comments and resigned. So it wasn't as if it was a long drawn out thing. He's gone straight away. And I think he's probably felt, and probably rightly so, that when you are in that position, you're talking about a game of football where gay players won't come out, and you've got the head of the FA making comments that it's a life choice. I'm just wondering if more people would have been offended who are gay than those who are black by those comments. As I'm neither, I can't answer that question. But I have gay friends, and I know that they were really upset by that specific comment.
Kevin George.
Do you know what? I actually struggle to believe Greg Clarke when he mentioned about speaking to gay footballers, because I've delivered programs across the country, pretty much most of the Premier League teams and the English Football League, and again around diversity and equality. And one of the topics that we discussed is about the environment, about players being able to actually be openly gay. And there's a great discomfort with the players. There was this discomfort about they, and I mean pretty much at every club around, being naked in the shower in that scenario, right? And so what I find interesting is that the players don't feel comfortable already, but that conversation, if you were a part of that team, forget the terraces, forget social media. You don't even have that foundation in your team. So when Greg Clarke said this, I'm thinking, I mean, I'm not saying I've been to every single club, but I've been to a lot. I've done a lot of age groups, and I found that quite difficult to believe. He said a few things, and I'm thinking, this is why a lot of the work I do, I always make sure I use names. Obviously, Jones, like my book, I make sure you have a story and a name, because I think I understand about anonymizing people, but you can also hide behind that. So I don't really find that, I struggle to believe it. I think in terms of me being offended by Greg Clarke's comments, not really. And I look at it like, it's a bit like playground talk. So we've got this outrage, social media, something happens, everyone's like, oh my God. And I look at the young players, as I said on Sky News, where there's a club where under 13s got put into blacks versus white, Premier League club. There's all these other things that happen in training grounds that affect someone's career, that affects their life. So when I hear someone like Greg, I keep saying his name, Greg Clarke's comment, I'm like, okay, it's wrong. But when I think about someone who's in a training ground who gets racially abused and has to go into that place every day, I'm just like, Greg Clarke said it, yeah, whatever. That person, imagine how they feel every day and they can't say anything and they feel powerless. and the teammates around them and the coaches, these are and high-profile people who say and do nothing. And so these are the things that frustrate me, because when I go online and I see the outrage, I'm looking at the big organizations in football, these big all these big people, all this outrage, and they say nothing when it's right in front of them, and the broadcasters too. And these are the things that bother me. People comment, it's wrong, but I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
No matter what the subject matter is about, that if somebody puts even a half a foot wrong, the big problem now is social media. Whether it's about football results, people screaming for a manager to be sacked, or whether it's a misplaced comment, or whether it's misplaced or not, but whether it's a comment that's been taken the wrong way, that we are now in a very today where we want to see people fall on their swords.
I think we're getting a bit of feedback from you, John. I think it's your sound. So if you can try and check that out for us, that would be really, really good.
Is that better?
Yeah, sounds much, much better.
I've turned my heater off.
Okay, that's probably why. But the fact that he resigned so quickly, I mean, if somebody in his position makes a mistake, it's almost as if these days there's no room for error. And I get it that, it's down to the individual to educate themselves. Just like Kev, to be honest with you, just listening to what he said, if I was to, take his position away, detach him from his position, and somebody, I saw the clip on TV, the person made such a statement. To me, I think is more down to ignorance than actually the person being homophobic or racist. Under normal circumstances, everyone will think I should I should get angry at such comments. But I just think the guy literally, like you said, John, he's old fashioned. And again, I think I was reflecting upon it, and the term colored, I keep coming back to the race because that's something that I've been talking about a lot, and I've experienced racism myself. The term colored and a person of color could easily be mistaken. Don't you think so? Because a person of color is accepted and colored is not accepted.
I get that. And go.
Yeah, no, I do totally get that. But going back onto that comment, Jones, I think we're in a situation now. We're in a world where, for decades, centuries even, everything was about the white man. Slavery, empowerment, homosexuality was illegal. Now there is a balancing going on within society, and people are more aware of and are more open, and rightly so, to the rights of everybody to live normal, equal, happy lives. And in some cases, yeah, I do agree the seesaw might have, if you like, tipped that way, but it will balance. We will find a way through. Humans are very durable, and leave human beings to get on with things. We'll find a way. But that will balance, and it will right itself. But at the moment, we seem to be offended by everything.
Kev?
Yeah. Do you know what it is as well? When we're offended, we outsource responsibility. So as I said before, people will experience racism every day. Not every day, but they will experience it in front of them in their workplace. And they don't do anything. And it's the same thing about when I was saying about fear. Again, players, they were playing, didn't say anything about it. Again, there was an issue around black managers, didn't say anything about it. They retire and they become extremely vocal. So then I start to question, is this about the issue, or is this self-serving because you're not getting the opportunity now? Now, a part of me, that's what I used to think. I was so disappointed. But now I'm looking at, actually, these guys were just scared. But why aren't we speaking about that? Why aren't we speaking about the players not having a voice? And I think it's really, really important to do that. Instead of just having this outrage, let's look at why people weren't speaking. Let's look at maybe why people are making mistakes, because not all these people are racist, but we're not having these conversations. I think it's quite interesting that Greg Clarke resigned straight away, because he's 63 years old, so he's going to be coming up to retirement anyway. Save all the headache. He's going to be cool. It's interesting that he stayed with UEFA though, because UEFA.
He's resigned, Kev.
He's resigned from UEFA as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Vice
okay.
president. Yeah.
Well, because I was going to say, for me, there's some serious question marks. I mean, we all know what happens in Italy with regards to the racist abuse. Then we get the outrage, nothing gets done. Now, for me, it's interesting because, as I said to you, when you asked the question before, Kevin, are you offended? The reason why I'm not offended by the comments because that's low-level racism. It comes, it goes. What upsets me is the systematic stuff that allows the racism to continue. So Syria R can pretty much do whatever they want and nothing happens. So now it's got to the stage where a player moves out there. I'm like, well, you got to expect it. That's how bad it is. We're in 2020. I'm like, boy, you went out there, you know what it's like. So it's the mechanics by what upholds these systems. The name calling, as I said, it's wrong. I'm not saying it's okay. We got to start looking bigger, and that's for me my frustration. Why are we picking at these?
But don't you think that opportunity is now here now? Whether we think Greg Clarke is a racist as a human being or not, the fact that he has decided to resign for this type of, for the comments he's made, for the type of language he's used, do you not think now this actually does present the game of football with an opportunity? And it's a big if, but assuming they pick the right man to replace him, and the fact that there's been a furore about his use of language, do you not think now this actually does present a great opportunity to really have this conversation and to address some of these matters?
Yeah, I think
no.
so. Okay, no, go on, because you disagree. So go on.
Okay, so I would say no because again we've always settled for crumbs. So it's almost like awareness, or we have a conversation. There has to come a time where, for example, the rules change. So again, I'm not going to name the governing bodies. I think in the future I will talk about this stuff, but I've done training with the governing bodies in this country, and there was things like, what would you do, for example, if there's a racist incident, or what would you encourage the players to do? And my first instance was, I'm not in a position to tell the players what to do. Ideally, I'd want them to walk off because I know if they do that, they damage the money. When you mess with the money, you get action, right? But I was always like benignly steered to tell players not to walk off the pitch. Now that was telling for me, and the reason why I say that is because people say racist things and resign and get sacked all the time, but the systems are still in place. However, if the FA or if the Premier League say, look, if there's a racist incident and they create categories, if this type of incident happens, this is the fine or this is the suspensions, and they did that for each category, then I can say, okay, change will happen. Or if they say, we are going to judge the referee's performance also with how they manage racial incidences. Because I know, and we all know this from back in the day, that if I fouled someone in the box in the first minute, the ref is less likely to give the penalty away. If it happens in the 70th minute, he's more likely.
Yeah.
We know that the ref, this pressure is real. Their decisions change. They're human. It's natural. But I think if we now look at it in terms of their performance being judged and how they manage this, and they can't just turn around and say, for example, I never heard that racist abuse. If there's other people in there that say, well, actually, I've heard it, then we can say, okay, well, maybe you're not adequate and you can't manage it at this level because we prioritize this. If FIFA or UEFA, whoever manages the leagues overall says, okay, this is the expectation. So, i.e., Serie A, if you don't meet the requirements, these are going to be the sanctions. It's not so much about people who comes in, who comes out. It's you need to get into the rules and the laws. Otherwise, it's almost like one in, one out. That's what it's going to be.
But then, we come back to, where the same place, because if there's a lack of representation at the top level, then nothing is going to change. John did touch on who should replace Greg Clarke, and a few names have been thrown out there. People saying Les Ferdinand should be someone to fill that position. And for me, I would like somebody, from the ethnic minority, the BAME community, to take that position. Because the more I have discussions with people who are non-black or non-ethnic minorities, when you try to explain racism to them, a lot of people just don't understand it. And for me, it comes from the top. And Go on, John.
I was going to say I'd quite like to see Paul Elliott in with the show. I know Paul quite well. I worked with him
Yeah,
when he
yeah.
was at Charlton, but very quietly, Paul has built quite a formidable career in football administration. And if you're looking for change, then I think Paul is potentially somebody that will be brave enough to make those sort of decisions.
I mean, for me, listen, in football, I would say representation is so important. I mean, that's part of the reason why I got into football. That's why you have, for example, a lot of black players supporting, say, Liverpool because of John Barnes. It is so important. However, as they say, all skinfolk ain't kinfolk. Because I look at it like this: you have to have a certain strength of character, a certain level of knowledge. You have to be. It's almost like you need the same qualities that we look at and judge on the pitch, because you can have someone who's say a black person in that position, but it doesn't mean they're actually going to do the job right. By the way, I'm not too fussed about the race of the person in leadership. I just want the person to do the right thing. Because what happens is, and this has been going on for a while, and I did staff training. I delivered a program at a club. I remember it was 3 years ago, and I was with these coaches, right? And they were all in uproar because they basically said the FA had put on, I think it's like an A license, but only for black coaches. And they were fuming. And they said, well, hold on a minute. What if that was just for white coaches? Now, my argument, this is just my personal opinion, is because the conversation, going back to fear, people avoid it. What they then do is they put other things in place, and it causes a divide. So at the moment, what people are saying, like Jonesy, you said, you know what, leadership, put a black person in there. But that doesn't solve the problem. And then, so that's what some white people might think. And it becomes an issue. It doesn't matter the race of the person. What matters is that person brave enough, first of all, to do the right thing? And secondly, are they going to put in systematic changes? Or are they going to be a puppet and just say, diversity? Let's do some boards and some T-shirts, some banners. Let's have a diversity day.
I think.
One sec, John. And I recently did my level 2 coaching badge, and goodness me, the fact that Gifton Noah Williams was part of the staff, okay, to me was massive. Simply because I felt like I can connect with him. And it wasn't just me, and this was, all the players could connect with him, but especially for the black players, they could really connect with him. And if we didn't understand some certain things we couldn't grasp, he was quick to talk to us, explain things to us, and before you knew it, everyone was just gathering around him. We'd be sitting down, and they would say, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do for today. Come up with your own ideas," and then Gifton would just come over and say, "Okay, what do you think? All right, that's good, but what if you do it this way? What if you do it that way?" And the fact that for me there was a representative there, somebody who looked like me, gave me the confidence to actually go out there and do what I needed to do. Now, I used to think it doesn't matter, provided the person is qualified and they can do the job. But it does matter because I experienced it. And most of the lads will tell you, he was very, very helpful. And sometimes, it's like, as a black person, and this has nothing to do with whoever is in the room, sometimes we're just a bit quiet, and sometimes we feel like if we want to say something, we're not confident. But the moment he was there, it made things so much easier. We were able to go out there and do what we needed to do. Yeah.
What I'll say to you is, yes, listen, I'm not saying representation isn't important, but also Gifton's a coach. That's part of the job, right? So he's a good coach. The fact that he put you guys at ease, he's a good coach. And I believe that, yes, representation is important, but I'm also aware of what the charity problem can bring in terms of, because you're black, you get there. And I'm saying that's a dangerous ground to get to. So me personally, when I think of former players, there's one person that comes to mind is maybe Jason Roberts. There's not many, but I'm saying regardless, I've been in schools as a young boy. Obviously, there wasn't many black people in my school. When I saw a black teacher, it was almost like culturally they get me, and I had this expectation placed on the teacher. When they didn't meet that expectation, I like, oh, waste. It wasn't the teacher's fault, like, but because of that was my need. I needed that need to be met. Now I get it, but one reason why I'm using that example, and it's the same with coaches. I've seen it at clubs where players make certain comments because they have that same expectation. But what I'm trying to say is, just because that person is the same race, it doesn't mean they're going to suit your needs. And also, what you have to also understand is that's you as an individual. What I'm trying to say is that the issues are bigger than me and they're bigger than you. I'm talking about systematic change, so that when any Lucan has her problem, she doesn't have to rely on the strength that she had to challenge the FA by herself and her knowledge. And it was a long, rigorous fight. Then on top of that, the other stuff that sprouted from it, whether it be press, whether it be her teammates turning on her. When the players are in Italy, if you're looking at the structures changing, they will get protected. So I understand representation is important, but all you need is competent people in that role. That's first and foremost.
No, that's actually a really good point, because what you don't want is just a figurehead just because somebody comes from, has a BAME background. The problems at the FA aren't just about this. The FA is this horrible, and it is a horrible organisation with all the local county FAs and all the local councillors. And back in the day, they used to be called the Gin and Tonic Brigade. They were 70-year-old. They're all 90 now. You get very little representation on these local FAs, and they do wield a lot of power. They wield a lot of votes, and so there is a danger that whoever comes in would be seen with a lot of resistance from these by a lot of these local FAs. I know there is, again, changes so slow. I think Berks and Bucks, when they appointed Marcus Gale, he was the first ever person with a BAME background to be appointed a councillor in Berks and Bucks. I could be wrong about that, but I'm sure that was the case. And it's slow, and so it's not just the top of the game that needs sorting out. It's the whole of the game. And we talk about referees and racism at the top of the game, but it's still endemic at the right in the grassroots of football. And these are the sort of problems that do go to the local FAs who support has been shocking and still remains shocking. So it's not just about the professional game, it's the whole game running right the way through to grassroots.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, for me, I always look at it like, and this is interesting because Malcolm X spoke about this all those years ago, and he spoke about how people basically will always favor the people who are like them, right? We naturally build rapport with people who we can relate with, whether it be race, whether it be gender, whether it be hobbies, all these things. So naturally, sometimes if I'm going to hire someone, I'm more likely to hire someone who's closer to me, because of that rapport will naturally spark up. And all of a sudden, I'll be like, oh yeah, I like whoever it is. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it gets to a stage where we have to look at the players and say, okay, this is what the situation is. What are you going to do about it? Because what we have to remember is the top footballers are multi-millionaires. It gets to a stage where it says, when you look at, say, Gary Neville, David Beckham, and a few of the other players, they've got Salford. And they didn't even really put all their money in. They're the front of it. Yeah. So why couldn't Ian Wright, Rio and Cole, why don't they do that? Because it's almost like I see these players and I think, you're always asking. We know what the situation is. Empower yourself. Be the example. Say, do you know what? We're going to go and do our own club. Oh, do you know what? Drogba, Essien, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to invest in the African football system, create leagues, put a structure in there, because all these players have to go to Europe and end up representing European teams. But how about we build into the structure in Africa? Now, what that does is that provides all the jobs, thousands of jobs. And then when those leagues get to a certain level, they have like their own version of the Champions League as well. Those players represent the African countries. The money, the sponsorships, all these things happen. Who will be at the top of the leadership? Then you get at the seat at the table when it comes to FIFA and making those decisions. This is when it goes back to Greg Clarke. We get tongue twisted on this. Greg Clarke's comment. I'm saying, we keep focusing on oh, he said this. We need to move on from that.
But that's because that is an easy target now. That's become an easy target by the fact that he has had to resign. It gives people the opportunity to say, well, change is happening when change isn't happening, and that is the point of this.
And I agree with you, John, because even in this industry that we find ourselves in, you go to a place and it's just all white people in a particular room, and then you find that one black person, and to me, it just looks as if they're just ticking boxes. That's it. As long as we have a black person or somebody from the BAME community in here, that's it. Job done. On the subject, Kev, of players coming together, I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I remember we did an interview with Heskey as well, and Heskey said he wanted to get into the boardrooms because that's what he wants to do, and I think he's actually studying for it because he wants to change.
Yeah, I think I did the same course.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought to myself, that's really important because not everyone wants to be a football coach. Not everybody wants to be, in among the setups, but in the boardrooms. And my thing is, to get people to come in to put the resources together and create a football club or buy a football club, I think that in itself is something that can be done. But then again, Kev, are we not more or less doing exactly what's being done to, people from the BAME community? Because you're more or less excluding other communities, or you're excluding, people.
No, I'm not saying to do that. Not at all. No, not at all. Because I'm not saying to exclude anyone. I'm saying when you create your own club, you get to make decisions. So that means if you feel, for example, okay, do you know what? There's racism. They're not picking black coaches or black leadership. Create your own club and then make it about equality. We're going to pick who we think is the best person for the job. That could be a white person or it could be a black person. What I'm saying to you is that if I'm a multi-millionaire playing in the Premier League and so are you, Jonesy, we should be getting together and calling our other mates, saying, let's do this. I'm not, and I want to be very clear because we're in a time where people are always looking for somebody else to do something. So I'm not saying that, we should, you know what, for example, what Greg Clarke said isn't wrong or, there isn't racism. No, I'm saying that is the case. But how many years are we going to keep saying, we're so hard done by? So all I'm saying is actually stop hiding behind social media and this outrage and do something. Everyone's always looking for someone else. And when I read the old school books to see how people made themselves vulnerable to the stage of their threats on their life, when we celebrate these people every Black History Month, we are scared to even speak. And I just think to myself, wow, that's how spoiled we are. And that's why I talk about footballers, I talk about coaches, I talk about broadcasters. These guys are in the know, they all these things, and they're scared to lose their job. Listen, I get it, but you there's a way, you can do it.
It's a very difficult position to be in, Kev. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you. It's a very difficult position.
No, it's not.
No, because listen, Kev, we've had this conversation. I've had this conversation with someone that, the three of us, we know actually. And they wanted, somebody that we all know as well, who's working on Sky Sports, to actually tweet it or say something about it. And the person was reluctant. And I get their position. But then, the moment they don't do it, you hear, Chinese whispers, oh, yeah, he's gone to Sky Sports now, he's a sellout. He's towing the line, and you need to, and I'm thinking at the end of the day, as much as I want him to put his face out there, use that platform to talk about it. Obviously, he's got family he needs to feed as well. So, I get it. Do you understand? I get it. It's not easy to be the one going marching.
Yeah, but I've said this. I've said this to you before, Jones, and I've said it earlier on stage about the seesaw effect, if you like, where everything was on one side. Now it's tipped to that side. And I've said this to you before on a previous show, Jones. I back in the 80s, I worked at CFAX at the BBC. I've got no chance of getting a job at the BBC at the moment. I'm the wrong age. I'm white and I'm heterosexual. And although that's making a point and perhaps being over the top about that, it is true that has gone that way. But I don't get angry about that. I just realise that we're at a point in time where this seesaw effect is happening. But one day, and hopefully soon, that pendulum will come back, and it will be a little bit more balanced, where it is far less about ticking boxes and it's far more about somebody's ability. And I think that's what we're all striving to achieve. That's what we all want, isn't it? It doesn't matter where we come from or who we are. I think we'd all much prefer to be recognized for our ability rather than because of our heritage or backgrounds.
Well, do you know what? Just going back to what Jonesy was saying, and saying it's difficult. As I said, the worst thing is you can lose your job. And I'm saying to you is, back in the day, people could lose their lives. So we have to also realize the privileged position we're in. And I'm saying to you, you could still use your voice effectively instead of being silent. So when we talk about people being scared to speak, the thing is, your silence is complicitness, right? And this is why when we had the George Floyd murder, I was quite frustrated because for me, seeing black people murdered on social media, it was like a reality show. It was all the time. It's normal. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, times had changed because COVID meant that one, you're at home, so there's nowhere to go, so you're going to watch it. And two, you couldn't watch it and then say, oh, this is my train stop, or oh, I've got to go to work. So it's sunk in. I understand that. But what I'm trying to say is that the whole world was already aware of the injustices, racism and murder. George Floyd is just the 2020 version of what's his name? The guy, Rodney King. So when I saw that, as well as my personal experience with Rodney King, seeing that, I was very aware of my mortality. I think I was like 12, 13. That was the same time I was going to Charlton, which was in Eltham, 2 years after Stephen Lawrence got murdered, which was also about 5 years after my brother got stabbed and I had to run for my life for being black, right? So when we talk about jobs, I'm like, really? And this is where my frustration comes in, because it comes when we talk about integrity. Remember, we're talking about football, the sport where we talk about character and leadership for 3 points. 3 points. And those points don't even mean anything. They don't mean anything. But when it comes to things that matter, we're like, oh, do you know what? You could lose your job. No. How many times have you been in the change room? Put your head where it counts. Yeah, all that. No, exactly. It's all fake. And all these guys, they want to, you know what? They want to have the pretend to fight, and then they pretend like the players can stop them. It's all theatre. And you know what? I'm so glad, because the poster boy of British culture, which is Roy Keane, actually said it in an interview. It's all theatre. When it comes to things that really matters, then you see real character. Now, respect to Gary Neville, because he held his hands up, but he kind of melted, to be fair, with the whole Raheem Sterling. But I respect that he held his hand up when Raheem Sterling got racially abused and he never dealt with it. And he didn't even consider it when he was playing. And that's not a dig at him. I'm using it as an example. Yeah. Then Jamie Carragher. Remember, we're talking about two captains here. Yeah. Jamie Carragher, when he was questioned about the Suarez T-shirts, it was almost like he didn't really know about it. People are dodging this topic. But what I'm trying to say is that we are all accountable. So when I go back to the Sky interview, I'm saying I wasn't really happy with how it was, because there's a lot of emotion and frustration, because when I talk about Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville, I'm also talking about myself, because I know of stuff that I've reported to the people high up in the biggest organizations in the company, and it's not been dealt with. And a part of me saying, well, hold on a minute, I should be doing more. And so I have to box clever with it, because obviously I don't want to get sued. I need to make sure I cover my angles. But we are too nice and too calm in each other. I can't be concerned about, oh, I might lose my job, when there are people that don't even have a job, or people can't work because of being mistreated or being racially abused, and they've responded and they've lost their job. So that's just my point overall on that.
No, I understand, and I think the fact that I've experienced it during the times I was playing on the pitch, off the pitch, and just being in around in London. And
did you sorry to cut you, but when you were playing, did you think you could speak to anyone?
Absolutely not.
That's why people need to speak up, and that's why they need to worry less about their job, because a young Jonesy couldn't speak to anyone. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, well, but Jones, we all know about a situation that you and I were both involved in a few years ago, where I have reported something, and I would do it again. I wouldn't change anything about that situation. But for 18 months, the people that we're talking about, and you know how I mean, made my life a living hell. You thought something would be reported and something would be done about it, but it was like the beginning of a soap opera. But it was horrible. Some of the stuff that went on, and I ended up walking away from that football club.
And then that brings us back. I understand what Kevin George is saying, and also what John is saying, because look at the treatment that John received. Now, when I experienced it, this was actually against Cardiff. Yeah, it was a Razor games against Cardiff, and by another player called me the black C word. Do you know what I mean? And I turned around, and I think I must have been the only black player on the field. Wow. And if there was another black player, probably sitting on the bench, so they couldn't hear it. Do you know what I mean? And I wasn't angry at my teammates because I felt like they didn't understand. They said, "Oh, mate, that's shocking. You can't say that." But they didn't understand. And I did report it to the management team at the time. Again, nothing got done about it. All they said was, "Don't worry about it. Just keep your chin up." It's shocking what he said, and that was it. And I was just meant to just carry on, the day-to-day activities as if nothing had happened. So I think that's why I'm much more vocal now about it, because I feel like if I don't say it, then I'm not doing myself justice, and plus it would just keep happening and keep happening.
But this is my point. So when we go back to Greg's comments and I talk about systematic change, really an example of that could be that players know if they experience it, they report it to their coaches, and there's a procedure that coaches don't go through. The players also have an access a place where they can access, say, the not the PFA, I'll say the FA and the Premier League, and report it. If the clubs don't actually, if they don't act on it, they also get sanctioned. So what I'm trying to get at is now, how would you feel as a young player? You will know it's going to get dealt with because your club can't just sweep it under the carpet, because then you can chase it up. And if the Premier League or the FA find that they've not dealt with it, then they get sanctioned. And then it can even go through to FIFA. And this is what I'm talking about. There needs to be stuff in place systematically, because Greg Clarke's been sacked. Who's to say there's not another Greg Clarke in his place? Who's to say? And another Mark Sampson. I don't even know the situation is now.
Devil's advocate here, and maybe you can come in as well, John, Kev. So, again, Young Jones, with these systems in place, as you've mentioned, and I report it to the club, nothing gets done. I go to the PFA, now the club gets in trouble. That's going to have an impact on me. It's definitely going to have an impact on me, because I've seen.
Listen, 1,000%.
So one more thing, Kev. I remember back in the days, right? We used to have the PFA. I think the PFA used to give this assessment, right? So I think the coaches had to fill in the assessment. The players had to fill it in as well. And then the member of the PFA will come to the club and just see how you're progressing, right? And one of the players actually wrote something negative about the coach in there. And Kev, that was it. And the coach said, "How can he say that about me? Like, I literally handed him a lifeline. Do you know what I mean? Gave him an opportunity, and this is what he's doing to me." And in the end,
but that should have been anonymous, though. That's poor by the PFA to me. If that is the case, that's poor. But go on.
That was what happened. This was years ago. This was, I think,
that should have been anonymous for that reason. But what I would say is, obviously, you have the option. So if you did suffer,
let me clarify something, Kev. Now, I don't think the PFA mentioned the player's name, but the coach was able to find out. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you suffered racial abuse and the club didn't act, I understand because I'd be the same in terms of I don't want it to affect my career, but this is where you can be strategic, because obviously, say for example, your contract is up at the end of this season. It happens now. You don't get a contract, I would report it. Or if you do go on to get a career, I'll reference it, because then what happens is these things get logged. Either way it happens. Look, 20 years ago, my teammate died. My other teammates nearly died. And we're revisiting that even now and having conversations, and there's a lot of stuff coming out even now. And to be honest with you, I use it because of the welfare of football young players is absolutely horrendous. And unfortunately, we went through that, but I'm using it to give another one, literally showing a case of football 20 years ago till now and how players are neglected in different ways. So it doesn't mean that your case might get dealt with, but I think it's a step further. And you can only do that truly if you do it systematically. Because as I said, Greg Clarke has gone. Who's to say another Greg Clarke doesn't fill his place? It doesn't really matter in terms of personnel.
Okay. Let's have last word from you, John.
I slightly disagree with that, Kev. I think if the FA make the right appointment,
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, but it's a
yeah,
gamble. It's
no,
a
of
gamble.
course it's, but of course it's beg your pardon. Of course it's a gamble, and I agree with a lot of what's been said. Particularly, is Greg Clarke a racist or not? The bottom line for me is, and this is my view on it, and this is you cannot have a head of an organisation that's already under criticism for various aspects when it comes to these subjects. And we mentioned about the homosexuality side, the gay side of it. We mentioned the racist side of it, but there was also the pigeonholing of which we haven't talked about tonight. Him talking about Asians working in IT. It wasn't just one thing he said. He's come out with a whole stream of things.
John, I get it, but maybe I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong. But I didn't find that offensive.
No, it is, to me, I think it's even goes beyond whether it's offensive or not. He said these, and he's actually said these at quite an important meeting, on a Zoom meeting, it was Department of Culture or whatever it was.
Oh, go on, sorry.
And so these aren't things that have been said privately and picked up by, I don't know, somebody with a mobile phone and then reported them. This is something he's actually come out and said openly. And the fact that he's done that tells me that he shouldn't, just for stupidity, he shouldn't be running the FA. If nothing else.
Yeah. To be honest, it's a stereotype, but also, and I did question in terms of whether he should have had that job in the first place when he made these comments, and the one about women's football, about the goalkeepers. Because one thing I'll say is, I'm not surprised because it happens to boys, and that's why, as in men's football, there's this running joke about footballers. Goalkeepers. Why would you want a football kicked at you? So actually, him making that comment doesn't even make sense because it's in the men's game as well. So apart from me, I was thinking, what? Like, who is this guy? That's what I was thinking, to be honest with you. So when people say, "Oh, do you think he should lose his job?" People make mistakes, but when you have a barrage of these mistakes and you willfully say them, I'm just gobsmacked, to be honest. I'm gobsmacked.
All right, guys. It's been great talking to the both of you. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Kev and John. Hopefully, we'll do this again and not be talking about racism, but something more along the lines.
It would be nice to be talking about the fans back in the ground, say.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kev.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thanks. So, guys, that was Kevin, George, and also John Warrington. John Warrington is a sports journalist. Kevin George is a clinical consultant. So what we just discussed was about the resignation of the FA chairman. Now we're moving on swiftly. And our next point of discussion is remembering former president of Ghana, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, the former president of Ghana, who sadly passed away yesterday. The cause of death is yet unknown because it hasn't been confirmed yet. A lot of people are making speculations out there, which, I wouldn't like to put anything out there that has not been confirmed yet. Soon we will speak to a journalist in Ghana who will be joining us very, very soon. Then we'll speak to the political the politicians here in the UK branch of political parties in Ghana, and I can see Mr. Kichiosin is on here, so they'll be joining us very very soon. Make sure you share, leave a comment. We'd like to know your thoughts about President Rawlings, the former president of Ghana. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to speak to the president of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings. And for me, anyway, before I come to that, let me just maybe give you my thoughts about Jerry John Rawlings. I was born in Ghana, raised in Ghana, went to primary school in Ghana, and I came here, I think at the age of 11 or 10, I came to the UK. And back then, the stories we used to hear about Rawlings was, I wouldn't say it was so much positive. You know, he was a soldier, and usually soldiers don't tolerate nonsense. And, you know, he was a man who commanded respect. And so I didn't really know much about him per se. We knew about how he gained power, and then, you know, through coup d'etats, and then finally became a Democrat. And Ghana, you know, the Constitution of Ghana was written in 1992 through this man. But then, of course, you know, you look at the history of how he became the leader of Ghana, how, you know, people died, that the political atmosphere at that particular time was very intense, and a lot of people lost their lives. Businesses collapsed, many people left the country, and, you know, the story goes on. So, fast forward now. I had the opportunity to speak to him. And prior to that, I had tried to get in contact with him because I wanted to do a lengthier interview with him to discuss about, you know, how he came to power, his history, and his views on how the nation is. But unfortunately, that couldn't happen. So when I met him at an event, the Guba, which is an event to honor Ghanaian UK based achievement awards. It is, you know, it honors Ghanaians doing well in the diaspora. And there he was. And he came out to give her an award. And I was just listening to him the moment he came on stage. You know, with such events, usually everyone is just looking for the people that will be receiving the awards. But I was just listening to him very attentively. And as soon as he came on the stage, he started talking about the issues between the Anglophone and Francophone in Cameroon, where people were losing their lives. And I was shocked. You know, I wasn't expecting that. For me, I just thought he was going to come on, you know, introduce whoever's won the award, give the award, and then go about his business. So when he made his way to the part where journalists can, you know, the media center where you can interview people, I grabbed him, and I think he was actually shocked by my line of question because he looked disinterested. Okay, when I was talking to him, he had his arms folded and he was completely looking. He was looking the opposite, completely opposite of where I was standing. And then I said to him, you know, I started off by asking him, you touched on the issue that's happening right now in Cameroon. Then all of a sudden, that caught his attention. And he said something that actually, right now, looking back at that particular interview, I thought was, you know, was important. And for me personally, because he said, you know, because of people like you, there is hope. We shouldn't use these type of events to, you know, paint a picture or to make things look as if everything is rosy. It's not. You know, so looking back, you can tell the love that this man had for the for Ghana and the continent as a whole. So I'm gonna play this interview with the former president, and then once we come back, we will speak to the politicians, and you know, we take it from there. But make sure you do share, guys. If you're on right now, make sure you share. Please share, leave your comments. Remembering the former president of Ghana, who sadly lost his life, who sadly passed away. Okay, so please do share. Let's hear your take on this. So we're gonna watch this, and then when we come back, we will actually talk more. touched on Cameroon, and we know the situation, what's going on in Cameroon now, and it seems as if the continent is more or less asleep, trying not stepping in, getting involved to resolve this issue that's happening in Cameroon right now.
So much has been going wrong, since the collapse of the bipolar world. And I keep quoting Pope John Paul all the time when he described the economic practices of the world as the savagery of capitalism, okay? Many years down the line, President Carter also castigated his own country when he said his country had lost the moral authority, okay? So if the developed part of this world are fumbling with issues of morality, ethics, justice to this extent, you can multiply it by 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, depending on which part of the continent of Africa. Things are getting much worse for us, okay? I see a lot of good news. It's people like you, in a way, who make us feel there's hope, okay? But on the whole, let's not use these occasions to anesthetize us, to give us the impression that all is well. It isn't. That kind of butchery, just because of what I said, power, political and monetary financial power in the hands of a few too many wrong people, greedy, selfish people who just want to own the earth's resources. Okay, just because they discovered oil in the Anglophone half, the English-speaking half, the non-French-speaking half, the southern portion, or is it the north, of Cameroon. And they have to get grip on it. They have to have it, irrespective of whose blood has to be shed. It's not, it's not good enough to be shed. It's not good enough. I mean, the world must, what else? Take a look at the atrocities, the savagery that's committed against humanity. Like I said, a click away on the internet. Let's wake up. Let's wake up.
Yeah, so that was the former president of Ghana. I had the opportunity to speak to him. Please do let me know if you can hear me. Apparently, my volume is very, very low, but from my end, everything seems fine. So I'll continue to adjust it. Let me know if you can hear me. If you can't hear me, let me know. Okay, let us know if our volume is good. If you can't hear me, try and adjust your, your volume on your set. Okay, where you're watching us from. Soon we'll have the politicians joining us. If you have anything to say about former president of Ghana, please do let us know. I will read it out. This is from Nana Hayford. Nana Hayford is saying, "Good evening, Nana Hayford." Nana Hayford says that I love everything that you do. Hear the great interviews, everything. Keep on going, keep on, bro. Thank you, Nana Hayford. Thank you. Okay, so I've been told that you can actually hear me. So without further ado, let's speak to Mr. Kit Yorson. Mr. Kit Yorson is the chairman for the Progressive People's Party, PPP, UK and Ireland. Let's speak to him. And soon, hopefully, the NDC and NPP will also join because they're supposed to be here. I'm actually waiting. We'll also, all being well, have a journalist from Ghana joining us soon as well. Mr. Yosin, thank you very much for taking time out to come on the show. How are you doing, sir? You okay?
I'm terribly well. Thank you very much. And how about you, Jones?
I'm good. Mr. Yosin. I'm good, Mr. Yosin.
Nice to hear from you today.
Likewise. And you actually just came back from Ghana. But most importantly, Mr. Yosin, so welcome back. It's good.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Yosin, yesterday we all heard the sad news of the former president of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings. First and foremost, your take on it and where you were, when you heard the news.
Yesterday, I was doing an interview. I was writing an article. And somebody called me to break the news. But in Ghana, some rumors are not true or genuine. So I had to really call Accra. And it was confirmed. I called my party folks and it was confirmed that it is true. And so, honestly, I mean, it knocked me, it hit me a lot. So I stopped the article I was writing and only to continue today. It came to me as a massive blow because the gentleman recently buried his mother. I'm not saying because of that one cannot die, but then I don't think he's finished grieving the passing away of the mom, and suddenly he also drops dead, and that was a massive worry. Up until this day, I'm not sure what caused it, but I believe that as time goes on, we will know exactly what happened. I'm so sorry that he's gone this way because it was a special person to me, and I like people who are aggressive. I like aggression. I like people who are aggressive, and so we talk about most of his stuff later on. But then I like him so much. I mean, he was somebody who was charismatic. He became charismatic. He had it all. He had it all. My greatest disappointment is that he did not play the game as he should have been. He had it. He fumbled with it. He didn't know how to use it. Otherwise, Rawlings would have done better than what we saw him do. I'm not saying he's hopeless, he was useless, but a good grief, man. If he has had some serious advisors around, maybe such as myself, seriously, my goodness me, I would advise him. There are certain things you don't have to say. There's certain things you don't have to do. There's certain things you've got to do. I'm sorry. I don't know the people around who advised him. It's a great shame. He would have been one of the finest ever leaders in the world, especially in the African world. That's the way I saw him. He has so much going.
Tell us a bit about the early days of former President Rawlings, and when he actually came into power, because we've had this discussion before, Mr. Yosin, and I think you spoke of where you were when you heard the name Jerry John Rawlings and the whole movement.
Yes, it's quite interesting. I mean, I belong to, if you like, Afro-Caribbean Students Union, in my days when I was a much younger guy, when I was a student in the Midlands. And seriously, we were political. We had political discussions from students from West Indies in Africa, Uganda, South Africa, you name it, Nigerians and all that. So it was a big organization in the West Midlands, National Students Union, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So one day, one of my colleagues who happened to be West Indian, and of course one Ugandan guy, they came to my door. In those days, we did not have mobile phones. We only had landline. And so these guys came to me. He said, listen, the things you have been saying, somebody has come, called Rawlings, he has done it. And I said, what was it? I said, then this guy referred to me. He said, well, we were talking about Ghanaian politics and all that in those days. And I thought that some of these soldiers who were in power in those days, they misused their powers in those days. So I believed that we needed to get the place cleaned up. And I mentioned some names, seriously. I did mention names, and I must be honest. And the names I mentioned, a lot of them were in the firing squad line in those days, when Rawlings and his men had fired them or shot them to death and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I believed that you must not use your position to amass private or personal wealth when the rest of Ghanaians are struggling. Some have no shoes to wear. I'm always on the side of the poorest of the poor. So to cut long story short, this is what a friend of mine called Shakespeare, he's from West Indies. He told me that the things you said, there's certain names you mentioned, they are all in the firing squad line. They thought I was related to Rawlings. So no, I never met the gentleman before. He may come from Central Region because I'm from Central Region. We are the people who use English names mostly
Yeah.
in Ghana, and to some extent Accra and the rest of Ghana. Well, I didn't know him from Adam, but there was something there for the guy to tell me, and he believed that the ideas that are churned out in those days, are the ideas that Rollins and his group had carried out. So I said, well, I thought, okay, then that is good. If the guy is thinking what I was thinking at that time, and he has come on, then I thought he had a mandate. I thought he had a plan. I believe that he's got a plan, which would take Ghana forward. Because people were amassing word left and right and center. And so when this guy came, the things he did it so quickly. Certain generals had to die, certain officials had to die because of their position. There is so many people, Ghanaians. There are Ghanaians who ran away into London. They know that I know them. I saw them. I remember them. Big people. Bishops of religious organizations in Ghana. Bank managers. I would say lecturers, a few lecturers and all that. The big people. They ran away from Ghana. I said, what's going on? Apparently, there were those who misused their offices were being shot and killed naturally. So if you've done something wrong, you will definitely have to run away. Most of them ran away into Ghana and into UK. And I promise you, some of them have not gone back yet. I know them. And you know that, you know what I mean? And others went to Germany, others went to USA and all that, because a guy came out to sweep clean the place and put things, good structures in place.
Talk
But
a bit. Talk a
yeah,
bit about the political atmosphere around the time that Rawlings did the coup.
it's time he did the coup. See, this guy made the biggest statement ever in Ghana. The first person to make such a statement was Kwame Nkrumah. That's taking power from British government. That was the first. And the next one was what Rawlings did. He came and suddenly lined up certain people who have faulted and all that, cleaned them up. My goodness me, he put a lot of fear in the whole country. A massive, massive problems that came into Ghana at that time. So that's what I said. Those who ran away, they knew what they had done before they ran away. And there was not good organization of this arrangement of taking over or coming into power and all that. There was no time to think.
No.
I mean, Rawlings and his men, they had no chance. They've taken over. But how to deal with it was a massive problem. So they went to the universities, very tactfully. Yeah. They went to universities. They went to KNUST in Kumasi. In those days, they had wiped off the name of Nkrumah. They call it UST. Okay. University of Science and Tech.
Mr. Yosin, I would just ask you to hold on briefly for me, because right now I have on the show Annie Efua Ampofo. She's a broadcast journalist from GNTV and ATV in Ghana. Annie, thank you very much for coming. How are you, Annie?
Thank you, Jones. I'm fine. The line is not too clear, but I think I'll manage.
Yes, we can hear you. That's fine. We can hear you. So
Okay.
Annie, yesterday we heard the unfortunate news of the passing of the former president of Ghana. So if you can give us an update as to what's happened, what's being said about the former president, and just the mood in general in Ghana.
Okay, so condolences to all of us, every Ghanaian across the world, and especially in Ghana. And I think that it was a very sorrowful and shocking news that shook the very foundations of the country when the news finally broke out. So, from my end, our sources had it that he actually died in the early hours of yesterday. However, the story was withheld, or the breaking of the news was withheld for some time until family members and leaders in charge were sure to let it out. So I think around 9:30, 10, then it started trickling in, and then news media houses, social media persons, leaders all started receiving the story or the news. From the beginning, I must say that it was very, very difficult for anybody to accept for the first time. People were practically journalists for a moment, because when they received the story or the news, they had to check and recheck and be sure this is true. Everybody was sort of in shock. They did not want to believe that that actually happened, and we all wished that it was a hoax. Until after about 2, 3 hours, let's just say by 12 midday, everybody was now very sure that it was true. Some of us had to take to our social media platforms and put it there before people believed it. Even with that, people still doubted it. And because we were all in shock, there was no time to. I particularly normally interact with people a lot on my social media platform,
Mhm.
but this time I mean, it was writing a story in sorrow and in shock, and I wasn't in a position of explaining myself or explaining the issue. It is what it is, and that's what we all received it. So I think by close of day, say by um 1500, 1600, we started receiving words of condolences from other African leaders. We had some from Liberia, we had some from Kenya, we had some from, I think, was it France? Yes, I think we had from France, we had from Nigeria. And then our own leaders also had their own um, condolence messages to give from parliament and other leaders that were in charge. So basically, what I can say is the president has called for a 7 day to be set aside for his mourning, and flags are flying half mast. People had to observe. And so for now, that is what it is. The country is very, very um, cold in terms of mood. Everybody is sad. Almost everybody, I would say almost everybody is sad. Almost everybody is in shock. But do not think that there are people who uh, are happy. Do not think there are people who are also sad, but they are rather happy, I would say that. Because people were really bold enough to come on social media or take to social media platforms and express their joy. And I think some of us who know maybe a little bit of history about the man Rawlings will understand from that point of view, because people have wished very bad things for him. So when I saw such messages, I was not too surprised. So basically, I think for now, that's what I can say.
Annie, thank you very much for talking to us. Hopefully, we get more time to talk to you, as the dust settles a little bit more. Thank you very much, Annie. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So, yeah, that was Annie that we just spoke to. She's a journalist from Ghana. Annie, if we're ample for broadcast journalist for GNTV and ATV. So, Annie, thank you. Really appreciate that for giving us the update as to what's going on. Now, we'll go back to Mr. Yosin. I also have Alexander Bediako. Alex is actually part of the NDC UK branch here. It'd be good to hear his take because the former president of Ghana, who has passed away, is the founding father of the party, National Democratic Congress. Alex, Thank you
Yes,
very
Joe.
much
How
for
are you?
taking time out. I'm very well, thank you. Well, I'm not so well, but
Yeah,
you know, um, Ghana is
I know.
morning right about now, and
Yeah.
Mr. Yosin has spoken a bit about the former president, and as Annie said, many people have their views, about the former president. But I want to hear, from you where you were when you heard the news, and what has this done to the party itself.
Yeah. Thank you, Jones. Yes. People are entitled to express their various view that depend on where they stand, their experiences with the era of Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings, and what have you. So people have the right to express their view. I always say that if you are as old like myself, maybe like Mr. Yosin himself, one will also have a different view. If you are younger, maybe born after the revolution or in the 1980s or 90s, your view will quite be different. Personally, I was a young person uh, in the barracks at the time, and I have personal encounter with Flight Lieutenant Rawlings on several occasions. I used to follow him on a horse to Pongoland where he played that polo ball, and riding on a horse that time called Lucifer. So as a barracks boy, I also met Jerry Rawlings at the cookhouse where we young people, when we close from school, we go to pick some food from the soldiers in the cookhouse. And those were the time that uh, I met Rawlings personally. And because of the humor of the person, the character of the person, that eventually made me join the National Democratic Congress. Um, I remember those days. I think Mr. Yossi will attest to this fact, where virtually there was nothing, there was no food in Ghana. And sometimes when our parents cook, you need to take a cup of water to drink it before it because the food was not sufficient. And the determination of this man, where he took it as from 1979 through the 1981, eventually become the democratically elected president of Republic of Ghana. The how he took Ghana, I'll say from the rebels and brought it to where we are today. I think that is his sudden death for me as a person and a member of the National Democratic Congress, that's a big shock because um, I see Rawlings as one of the personalities across the world that deviate from the social construct of what we call leadership. He determined he ruled. In other words, he governed our country by his own convictions, and that produced a lot of things that we have built our democracy on today. Many people will disagree because probably where they stand or their experiences and what have you. You see, I always look at the greater good, what has happened, and where we were as a country, the rampant military coup that engulfed our country over the years. It was during Rawlings' time. When Rawlings, this coup stopped, that alone tells something about the person. Like Mr. Yeltsin was saying, that there was a challenge with the revolution where initially things that they thought that they were coming to do because of initial policies of the Rawlings, the populists, any government want um, be what wanted by the people. So some of the policy that PNDC or the Armed Forces Revolutionary era was so much not in consonant with the people, or that brought some kind of hardship. Many countries, because the Ghana's economy at that time was very depressed, so many countries were not prepared to give anything. But where things started changing from around 1989 or 88, that way, things start improving. Then eventually we held our first election in the Fourth Republic in 1992. It was then that I saw President of the United States. I think that was Clinton.
Bill
Came to
Clinton.
Ghana.
Bill
The
Clinton.
Queen came
Yes, Bill
because they
Clinton.
saw what really Rawlings has been able to do by restructuring the economy and doing a whole lot of things. So for me, I think this is a leadership with exception, committed to the cause of Ghanaians.
Okay. All right. Let me bring in Mr. Yosin. Mr. Yosin, I was asking you before we spoke to Annie about the political atmosphere at the time that Rawlings, the revolution took place. And you did mention the fact that even yourself, you listed a few names which you thought were in the system and enriching themselves, to the detriment of the country. And these particular views is what a lot of people have held against Rawlings. These actions, I should say, is what has been held against Rawlings. But for you, you feel as though that was needed at that particular time.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I grew up as a trade unionist first. So I had that, I still have that in my blood, in my background. The Rawlings coming to power at that time, AFRC, was that time, it was the right thing to happen to Ghana at that time. The only thing that was missing is that he did not have the right advisors around him. And I'm quite openly honest about that. The right advisor. The man had a vision. He needed people to work with. Jesus Christ was there. He needed 12 apostles, not one apostle. He needed 12. Rawlings came. He needed men and women to work with. He lacked that. And people around him, I believe they were frightened. They were scared of him. So, so there was no careful planning from day one. He did the best he can do. But certain mistakes that took place straight away, people were, even students who are now, today, some of them are ministers. Students at that time, the boys in the universities who were saying, let the blood flow. I remember everywhere. Some of them are ministers. I don't want to mention their names. They are ministers in NDC and NPP. Those days, Rawlings didn't have the right people. Otherwise, he would have written a much, much better story. He still had a vision. He had Ghana at heart, which God bless his soul for that. Even though I'm not in his political party, I must be honest. He made a bigger statement, as I said to you already. But the few things that went wrong is there's a people around him. They were just simply interested in amassing personal wealth for themselves. They know themselves. I hope to God they will come and confess. Otherwise, Ghana would have been a totally different place. And I'm glad my brother said something. I don't know Rawlings personally, because when he came, I was not in Ghana. I've never met him in the flesh, but I followed him because I love Ghanaian politics. I followed him, you know what I mean? But he brought some rules that were not written. Something like Committee for Defense of Revolution. The boys were happy. For the kids, the working class, they don't care. They always want to ruffle the feathers of the big men and women. We know that. So all of Ghana said CDR, or Committee for Defense of Revolution, all over Ghana, guys were happy to upset their managers, their bosses, and all that. But that was not all it. I spoke against it from the UK at that time. I said, no. I mean, if you give responsibilities to people, you have to tell them how to do it. Delegation of authority or responsibility. You must tell the people, show them how to do it. But that knowledge was not there. Even if it was there, it was not shown. So all the guys, I mean, the working class boys and girls and all that in working places, state corporations, they did as they thought fit. For instance, Rawlings said, oh, anybody who's got 50,000, God knows, cities in the bank must come and account. And that was a tough one. Because there are Ghanaians over this part of the world, in Nigeria, in UK, in Germany, in USA, who had that kind of money in a bank account in a car. Because everybody wants to build in Ghana, as an example. So people, including a brother of my own, I must be honest, they had more than 50,000 cities in Ghana at that time. They seized all these monies. 50 CD notes, God knows if you got it, they will seize it. And things began to go wrong that way. And food. Women, I'm still, you know, I mean, I'm praising Rawlings, but a few things that went wrong, which people around him could have helped him, is why I'm saying that. I'm not criticizing him. We are now analyzing the situation, you know. So things like food shortages. If you are a businesswoman, a trader, and you got maybe 20 or 50 balls of kenke in your house, they will say you are hoarding it. And the woman had to be stripped naked and whipped, and because they are hoarding things, and businessmen and all that. That's why so many people ran away from the country. Now there were shortages now. There were real shortages because one day I had a brother, a brother's friend from Accra. He drove from Accra on a Sunday morning to Lomé. This is Lomé, in Togo. That guy said he was driving from Accra. You couldn't see bread being sold on the street until you got to inside Togo, as an example. And I heard, maybe those who were in Ghana at that time can confirm. They said, these days you can bake kome or kenke raw, and people will come to your house and buy it. You cannot display it in town.
So I'm guessing you're talking about the famine that happened in Ghana, 1983, right?
Yeah, not even farming, because it was designed by the system. That's what I'm saying. There was no planning. There was no careful planning by the AFRC regime at that time. So people were scared stiff to go out. If you got about, God knows, 50 bucks of kenke you are selling, they will say you are hoarding, stuff like that. So people kept it inside and you go and buy kome, raw kome, and you go and cook it at home. That's the stories we were being told in London all the time. So almost everybody was scared.
What I found interesting was, you know, looking at the former president and the way in which he came into power. And, you know, many would say he came through, you know, with the gun.
Yeah.
You know, to coin a phrase. But then what, you know, the interesting part is, in the end, he became a Democrat. And for me, what, you know, as I did mention earlier on before you came on, was I actually wrote to his team trying to conduct an interview with him because I wanted to know what had shifted. Because usually when we have dictators, it's very difficult for a dictator to then become a Democrat. And,
that's right.
You know, and that part, you know, has really, really baffled me. What actually shifted for him to suddenly decide to go, you know, the democratic way?
Yeah, that was a very interesting debate, discussion you had with him. I said, oh, goodness me, you couldn't have come from him. You know what I mean? Because he came in as a modest person. You know, I followed him. Came in as a very modest gentleman. I said, oh, wow, we got a right guy to come and do the right thing for us. Because, my goodness me, all our politicians there at that time, no, they were no good for fit for purpose, or our leaders there, they were not fit for purpose. They will do anything they want. So I thought this guy was coming. If you come with civilians to help you to do things. Because when Nkrumah was removed, Nkrumah was just not removed by Afrifa and Kutuka. He was removed by Buzia, MPP. Look, the soldiers, they had the right guys around them. They had the civilians around them. They are the MPP guys, and I'm no two sides about it. Because you remove CPP, who is next? Definitely it's MPP. There's nothing wrong with that. We all expected that. Even my father expected that. We expected Professor Wizia and his men. So they supported the, God knows, Afrifa and Lieutenant General Ankara, National Liberation Council. No, not a big deal. So I think at that time, Afrifa and Co, they were lucky to have civilian Justice Olenu, K.A. Buzia, and all that around. So they had them. Unfortunately, Mr. Rawlings didn't think about such things at all. He came in, he thought he can come with the buga business, military. No, it doesn't work in the real world. No, sir, it doesn't. You know what I mean? If he did the best he could do, but at the end of the day, his own men around him, they were taking the money. The same problem for which he staged a military coup d'etat. His own men inside were doing worse. I don't want to mention their name right now.
Alexander has come online. Alex, again, welcome, because I think your line dropped a minute ago. And I was asking Mr. Yosin, I don't know whether you heard me. I was
Yes, the line is
intrigued.
a bit bad.
Yeah, but can you hear us now?
We can hear you clearly.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
hear. I can hear you.
All right,
I can hear
good. So what
you.
I wanted to know was, what do you think changed? Because he
Yeah.
came in, he was seen as a dictator, and then all of a sudden became a Democrat. And now I'm always intrigued as to what actually changed in that time for him to shift, into the whole democratic process.
Say that again. I didn't get that the last bit of your statement.
Oh, the question I'm asking is, when former President Rawlings changed from being a dictator, so to speak, into ensuring a democratic process.
Yes. I don't think former President Rawlings is the only leader in sub-Saharan Africa or the world that have engaged in revolution. Every revolution, they don't follow the formal procedure where people elect a president or a candidate to a presidency. It comes with a force, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore it tag that name a dictator. A dictator means that, oh, you have not been elected through democratic means. And let me tell you, former President Rawlings staged the coup, and he gave the reasons for staging those coup. Among other things, economic conditions. But we also have to bear in mind that within every institute, every state or every country, there are political forces who also want to occupy the same position, just like a revolutionary person has occupied, and therefore will be calling for democratic and what have you. Former President Rawlings have admittedly said publicly several times that for him, he is not admirer of party democracy. But if that is what people want, then he is happy to engage in that process. Formation of the Ghana Electoral Commission for Democracy or something like that, and
Okay,
consequently,
Alex.
we
Alex, we're having problems actually trying to, you're making some valid points there, and we're struggling to hear you. So if you can maybe sort out the internet a little bit, maybe where you are, and then we can have you on. That would be really really helpful, Alex. I mean, Mr. Yosin, before
Yes.
we came on air, I was speaking to an MPP guy. And when I said to him, this is the topic we'll be discussing, he's actually meant to join us, but I don't know what's happened. But either way, the show must go on. And he said, there's this phrase in Ghana, as when somebody has passed on, you don't talk of the ills that they did or the crimes or the bad things that they committed. However, he said, look, he did well towards the end. He changed, and I wanted to know, is that the same thing you saw of former president towards the latter stage of his life?
The latter stage of his life, he had learned his lessons, and but one thing, unfortunately, he could not do is that he did not write a book. I wanted to read a book from him, his ideas, his reasons for taking matters into his hand, or staging a military coup d'etat, because he was the leader of it. He was so special person to himself and to most of our societies in Ghana. He is somebody who planned to take over the government at that time. He was apprehended, waiting to be executed. Then suddenly things turned the other way around. My God, that is a story I've never heard before. Maybe in Southern America or Cuba, that kind of area. Of course, yes. That was wonderful. That man was a jewel in his own right.
Yeah.
Things turned around. Well, I mean, somebody says in Ghana, we don't talk about whatever. That rather, it's past. It's 24 hours ago, he passed on. We are not castigating him. God forbid. I'm not castigating him, or we are not castigating him. Maybe later on, but not right now. Because even in Nkrumah of all things, NPP have been bashing him anytime. Mention Nkrumah's name right now, they will bash him. For that, we know. But that's not a good way of life. But what?
No, I was just gonna say, Mr. Yes, I know Roy is trying to join us. Roy, if you can find somewhere safely to park, that would be really, really good, so we can talk to you, Roy. Roy, are you parked? If you're parked, can you just give me the thumbs up, and then we'll be able to get you on, Roy, because I know you can hear me. I think Roy has parked, and let's try and get him on.
Sure.
Roy. Okay, so for some reason, Roy. Okay, I think Roy is on now.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Yes, Roy. Yes, Roy. Now we can hear you. How you doing, sir? Okay. All right. So maybe Roy cannot hear us, but let's bring in Alexander. Hopefully, your line is much better now. I just want you to touch on the role that former President Rawlings played in bringing about peace in Liberia.
In Liberia?
Yes. Oh,
he brings
okay.
peace in Liberia.
Yes, because he played a significant role. But unfortunately, Alexander is gone. Alexander is gone. Unfortunately,
I believe he will come back.
He will come back. But if not, I'm sure we can put together another show next week, because I think it's important that we talk about the former president of Ghana. Alexander, you're back, and can you hear us, Alexander? Okay. Maybe not. But Mr. Yosin, I think we will leave it here for today. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Next week we will delve in deeper and
to end, one thing all Ghanaians have experienced from Mr. Rawlings is that when he came to power with his friends in AFRC, what they brought us was probity, accountability, transparency, or social justice. These three, 1, 2, 3 massive catchphrases will live with us for the rest of our lives. If every Ghana government was to go by these catchphrases or slogans, accountability, transparency, and probity, we would never have things like a Japan royalties and I confirm, or so many things. PDS scandals won't come if probity, accountability, transparency, That made a lot of people run away when Rawlings came. The Japan royalty is now going. They know the people involved are going. Do you think by AFRC standards, the Japan royalty would have happened in Ghana? Where would they be? Is it Teshi Bama Camp, a firing squad, or where? My goodness me. I mean, there's food for thought for the
Good
next time.
question. Yes,
Serious.
good question, Mr. Yosin. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Yosin, for coming on this show. Mr. Yosin is the chairman for the Progressive People's Party UK and Ireland. We've spoken to also Alexander Bediako. He's part of the National Democratic Congress UK branch. Wow. We will end it here. We will end it here, and all being well, as I said to my guests, that we will definitely continue next week because, this is just mere reaction of what happened, how people felt and where they were when they heard of the news that the former president of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings, has passed away. It would be good to hear your take as well. Thank you for tuning in. For some reason, the messages were not popping up. I know that a lot of people have shared this particular program. Continue to do so. We do appreciate it. If you haven't done so, head over to our YouTube channel, The Logic Box with Jones, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also like our page. And we'll do again next week. All being well, we'll do it again. Make sure you look after yourself, look after your family, look after yourself. Help me to help you. Coronavirus is still very much out there, people, so do take care. All right? Don't take it for a joke because it is not a joke. It's not a joke. It is serious, okay? Whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it, just protect yourself. Protect yourself to protect your loved ones. All right? My name is Jones. Thank you for watching. Share, look after yourself, and I will see you next week. It's bye from us.